We're recording all this, so. Yes.
Yeah.
Alright. Massively lower turnout this week than last week, of course.
What? Say that again? Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Massively lower turnout this week than last
Speak
week.
up, please.
Socialism for World War II.
Yeah. So last week we did Maoism, now we're doing World War II.
Oh, no.
Wait, are we recording?
Yeah.
Since when?
A couple seconds ago or something.
I don't want that stoner remark on record.
Yeah, he called me a stoner.
Yeah, cut it
I
out,
would
cut
like
it
to.
out.
I would like to point out that I was called a stoner. I have never touched the thing. Ever.
I don't think that was on the record.
I don't know.
Well, now the record should
Well,
say
now it's on
weed
record.
is bad, kids. Don't do that.
Yes, so, put up this question here. What does everyone think the most important event of World War II is? Usually I would put up what do we know about this topic, but everyone knows a lot about World War II, so what's the most important event of World War II? Yeah, Nikita.
It's when they shot Franz Ferdinand.
Oh, that's World War
Come on, man.
Dash?
People died.
Awesome.
I'm good like that.
I. Count the Holocaust as a part of World War
I think we do. I think we
Yeah.
definitely do.
We definitely do.
Yeah, that was like one of the major things.
Why are you hiding in the corner? I'm so confused why you're hiding in the corner.
This is my space.
It's your corner? Okay, enjoy your corner.
Okay. Yes.
Was it when they invented chlorine gas? Was that the one?
Yeah, what about the use of cyanide? Mass producing the use of cyanide against poor innocent people?
Wait, the Bolshevik Revolution of 1917, is that one?
II. Atomic bomb?
All of the bombs?
All of the bombs.
All the bombs.
Alright. We're definitely not gonna have enough time to go
War
through all of
crimes?
it. So we're gonna go up to the phony war but go over a lot of background because it's just too big.
Sorry, which war can you say it again?
The phony war is an era of of World War II where
Okay.
nothing happened
Alright, cool.
for about a full year.
Sick.
So yes, let's move on. We're gonna go let's do an introduction first to what World War II is, although I'm sure a lot of you know what it actually is. But it is considered the greatest conflict in human history.
What makes it
I
the
have an
greatest?
actual serious one.
By death.
Okay.
The greatest, the most important part of World War II was World War I happening.
Yeah, because factual.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
question:
Yeah.
Who are we deeming? Why are we deeming the greatest? On what scale is this greatness being measured?
Probably like-
Technically, Franz Ferdinand getting shot is the most important event of World War II.
He's got a point there.
Technically, the Big Bang is the most important event of World War II.
That's true.
Technically,
The big bomb.
can we confirm?
Technically,
100%?
intelligence is the most.
Technically, anime exists. Technically, anime would not exist without Hitler.
Sure.
Is that true?
No, actually, no. That would
Brad,
probably
you're
not be
you don't
true.
live
Don't
through
think
like
Because
all
anime
these
came
wars.
from the nukes.
You're
After the
human,
nuke, if
yeah.
there was
But
a
Japan would have been
bomb-
nuked anyway
Yeah, Japan would have done
because
that
they
stuff
did their
anyways.
own war.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Japan and Pearl Harbor did their things.
Yeah.
They got
Well,
spicy
and
on the run.
Chinese-
To answer your question, Dash,
Sure,
I
yeah.
guess this is
Wait.
probably the greatest. I'm talking.
Did yours get it? Did
He's
yours
talking.
get it
You
for
shush.
You raise your
Teacher
hand. This is
talk.
a classroom.
Raise your hand.
Would they even invent nukes if it wasn't for Germany taking over like all of Europe?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Absolutely.
Probably.
Indefinitely.
I don't-
Have you ever heard of the Red Scare, man?
Exactly. We're
The
violent.
first one or the second one?
Look, think about it like this. Big boom, dead people.
Yes.
Dead people
Anyways,
don't live, big boom still happen. And there's no more
Yes.
dead people.
To answer Dash's question, why this is the greatest conflict in human history, this probably encompassed the most people in all the world, including civilians.
The first one we had.
Also going all over the world, touching every single theater that there ever was. North America, Africa, Asia, Europe, India, somewhat. Well, I guess India is in Asia.
Antarctica.
I mean, yeah, they
Right
did.
next-
World War II did.
In the south. In the
Somewhat.
South Pole.
Yeah.
Remember in the Adventures of Cavalier and Clay? That was like we went to Antarctica.
Yes. So, yes, and also it has the most deaths of all of the wars, pretty much. And it was also probably a really huge transition to a modern age, away from more like traditional warfare to modern warfare, more or less.
Call of Duty.
And also the polarization of politics, because there is, of course, the invention of fascism and all this nationalism and all these things that really got
Was
popularized.
politics not as polarized before? I'm pretty sure
Only
maybe it was even more polarized. You know, you have monarchism, like
I got a question, Teach.
Yes.
How do we atone for the horrible, great conflict of World War II? What do we do nowadays to
We have smaller conflicts but make them bigger.
No,
And
no,
Japan
I mean
denies
like,
nothing ever happened.
like how do we
Yeah,
memorialize
Japan
and
should
like
apologize.
No, Japan
sorry.
literally acts like nothing happened in China.
Nah.
There's no war in the.
See, that's my thing though, right? Aren't we gonna do this again and repeat if we don't have something being like, oh, oopsie, don't do that, right?
There's a new guy in Japan anyway.
Yeah, that's kind of what the UN and NATO have been made for.
Yeah, alright, I'm leaving now.
You're leaving now?
Yeah, I gotta go meet people.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Gotta go talk to
Okay.
people.
We didn't even get past introduction and you're already leaving.
Wow.
Not even, we didn't even get to the background of it.
I told you this would happen.
Sure. Okay. For my remaining 5 people here.
We need to have a wall of shame.
If you leave
So,
early.
Let's go. We're gonna go really far for background. As you can tell, we're mostly gonna talk about Germany and Japan. Those who don't know, Prussia was originally a country for Germany, or at least the biggest one, the United Germany, which came from the Teutonic Order, which came from the Crusades, of which I was going to talk about Crusades presentation earlier. Yes. Here's Prussia. This is a depiction of the Meiji Restoration. Which
Wait, but this was after the HR,
No, this is during the HRE.
but they're not unified yet.
No, this is before.
Wait, so
This blue is just after the Napoleonic War.
did they get split up after being the HRE?
No, the HRE has always been split up. They've been
The
just.
Holy
not
Roman
making-
Empire was like 100 bajillion.
Yeah.
Oh, so it was more like a confederacy?
Yeah, so the HRE was a confederacy of a shit ton of German states.
Yeah, did
And
you
they
know
were
this
neither
was
holy nor Roman nor an empire, right?
Yeah.
pretty much.
So yeah, and Prussia
Yeah,
was the
this is all
biggest of them
states.
all usually. And again, it's after the Napoleonic Wars. This is what they got, and all the colored stuff except for this color was what formed Germany. You know, as a whole. So, anyways, Prussian militarism, which is huge. The state of Prussia is extremely militaristic and centered around the military. There is an unknown French poet who was quoted saying that while many states have a military, the Prussian military has a state, which is interesting.
That is interesting. That's
And
pretty
they're also known for having a lot of advanced engineering. In the 1840s, they already had breech-loading weapons, which means you can load it from the back of the weapon instead of having to load it through the muzzle, where you see the musketeers loading like this, which gave them huge advantages in early wars. So they had that going for them. And they finally unified Germany in 1871. And I mean, most people don't know, but Germany is a very young country, even younger than the United States, which was in the 1780s. This was 1870s. So,
Because they unified also after the split, after the Berlin Wall.
yeah, they unified again after that. So yes, quickly moving to pre-World War I. This was Germany fully unified in its imperial state. But to get here, they had to fight a lot of wars, such as the Franco-German War, which is a war between Germany and France. Got this little bit of land from France. As well as the Brothers' War, is what it's quoted as, which was when Germany had fought Austria for many of these lower lands. And then the Second Schleswig War, which was for this territory up here against Denmark. So Germany didn't make many friends back then, but they are what they are now. And also they had themselves a nice colonial empire. Yes.
In your opinion, is Austria actually more German or more Austrian? Because they have
German.
kind of like their own thing going on with the Austria-Hungary.
Where are you going?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even know what you're doing. You're like walking here, walking there. You're looking at my hats. What's happening?
Oh yeah, I was looking at your house.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting thought. I mean, it used to be called Austria, but then the huge Hungarian population got really angry and threatened to revolt, so they compromised and called Austria-Hungary, or the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And of course, after World War I, they split quite humongously, I guess. So yes, Germany had a great, not great, but a vast colonial empire, colonies in Africa as well as Asia, and in China as well. They also had an advanced army, similar to their advanced engineering. They also had a somewhat advanced army. So, World War I, this is a huge event. It was extremely central to logistics, equipment, and smaller scale tactics. Of course, before we had line battles and musketeer era where people would just stand in blocks of musketeers and they shoot at each other, usually. That's my hat.
I'll give it back, it's fine.
Nikita, are you good?
No,
Like-
I'm great.
I don't know.
Better than ever.
Okay.
Just like this.
So yeah, we have musket blocks, and then even before that we had pike blocks, and so these huge blocks of people meant to have some kind of military force. I guess it needs to be that to be effective. But now with smaller arms and bolt action rifles and machine guns and things like that, you can have smaller scale of tactics with less men do the same amount of military strength as a musket block could be. And also the importance of artillery was globally understood after this war. I mean, Napoleon understood this before in the 1800s, but that was because he was biased and was an artilleryman before he became an emperor. But artillery was very important in this war, and still is important now. I don't know what you're doing, but so, and most of the
Is
deaths
that
were
Dunkin' Donuts coffee behind you?
what?
It is.
Yes. I think that was Rios. He was just in here before. I don't know, but so yeah.
Can I have some?
That's not mine. Stop interrupting.
Sorry.
So, and most of the deaths were caused by artillery in World War I, and machine guns and artillery was even more important in World War II. So, and even also, I'm sure you've heard the term shell shock. Everyone know what shell shock means? Yes. Of course, now we call it PTSD, but that's because shell shock was based on a false belief. It was believed that the shock waves caused by the artillery explosions would rattle your brain so much you just go insane. But obviously, that's not what really happens
I mean,
now.
that did contribute to it probably, right? Like,
Well, no, they're
just
actually thinking that the
concussions.
shock waves of the artillery rattle your brain so much it messed it up.
Did it not do that?
No.
I mean, I feel like if there's like giant explosions going off, that would kind of.
But it's more like your nervous system being stressed than actual shock waves.
So they had nothing to worry about, basically. They didn't really get mental illness back then.
Yeah. They just thought like everyone's brain was like reconfigured for the shock waves. But anyways, so yeah, that's why I call it PTSD now instead of shell shock. So yes. Moving on, of course, Treaty of Versailles, everyone probably knows this. The democratization of Germany, as well as the military restrictions, which everyone knows maybe. I'm not sure if it's 200,000 or 20,000 soldiers in the army. No Air Force. Couldn't have much of a navy either. That detail's usually left out. Actually, even after this, most of the world's countries in the London Treaty, they limited their size of their navy and the size of their ships. And it was measured based off of the British naval size. So you couldn't surpass the size of the British Navy. Basically, that's what they said. Which is interesting. Yes, question.
Why did they punish Germany so bad when it was really Austria-Hungary who did most?
Well, because there was no Austria-Hungary to punish.
They dissolved.
They were completely fragmented into Austria, Hungary, Romania, Czechoslovakia.
Slovenia,
Yeah.
etc.
So there was no Austria-Hungary to punish. They're like, you know what? Germany beat us up the most, so let's just punish Germany.
And then later, Czechoslovakia.
And also the reason was because the Americans asked the British for payment back for their participation in the war, and the British said, okay, you know what, France, you called me into this, so can I get the money from you to pay back to you? And then France were like, well, I don't have money, so you know what, the Germans got me, so I'm just going to get money from the Germans to give to the British to give to the United States. And so that's how it was mostly from that.
And the Zimmerman telegram also.
Yes.
That was kind of a big scandal.
Japanese militarism. Now we're moving on to Japan away from Germany. They're also centered around the military, with the samurai and also Bushido code as well. And they unified in 1603, which I don't know if you can tell, it's a bit earlier than 1871, but they did. And after that unification, they kind of isolated themselves from that.
Sorry.
Hey, anything you need?
I think I left I was gonna throw my coffee out.
Oh, yeah, you're
Yeah,
sorry.
Nikita.
It's garbage. Sorry. Sorry to interrupt.
It's alright.
I can.
I can drink it for you.
Quick cameo from the PE teacher Rio. Anyways, the Japanese isolated themselves once they were unified. And from this, they had, that's what I said, yes. They had societal, economic, and political prosperity. The population of Japan boomed, the economy of Japan boomed, and everyone was just overall very happy. And also they had a huge development in education, culture, and art. But to which after that, they had abruptly an end of isolation.
From the Portuguese.
Well, I mean, I guess they weren't completely isolated, but the United States in
Yeah.
the mid 1800s had come in and said, "Hey, I want to trade with you, and you got to do it, or else I'm gonna blow you up."
That's
And so
what
they did.
eventually.
Yeah. So, and the guy responsible, the diplomat, said sure, but the actual people in power were like no. But the diplomat did say yes anyways. And from this, the entire market was thrown off, and it was a huge crash in the market.
Yeah.
Because if they're completely isolated, they have a self-sufficient market, but now they have this new flow of resources they didn't have, like
They did them dirty.
like finished cotton. There was a huge import of finished cotton from the rest of the world, like refined cotton.
Oh, I thought like Finland.
No, just like
Isn't it a little cold to grow cotton?
no, just like refined cotton. And so there's a huge influx of refined cotton, and so all the workers of the cotton farmers and the cotton finishers, they just ran out of business because there's just more cotton that came in. Also, the value of gold greatly went down in Japan, and what many of the merchants did outside of the world was unfair trade. They'd buy the gold outside of the world at regular price and sell it 3 times higher to the Japanese because the Japanese didn't have as much gold.
Yeah.
And so the Japanese were just screwed.
Did they like need gold though?
No. So I don't know why they bought it anyways.
Because gold is supposed to not devalue, right?
Well, yeah, but like since
And
Japan
having-
was isolated, they had a lower supply of gold than the rest of the world, and so it was a higher value. And now they had more gold coming in, and so the merchants still sold it at the Japanese price, but bought it at the world price. And so then the value of gold went down in Japan because there's more supply of it.
But that's not supposed to happen with gold. That's the whole point of like owning
I like
gold.
that.
Yeah.
Well, now the world is all connected. and back
That's
then,
mess.
I know it's completely messed.
You've been invited.
Yeah.
And so after this abrupt exposure to the world, they had a Meiji Restoration, which from this time the shogun, basically the chief of the army, was leading Japan. But there was an emperor, but it's like United Kingdom now. The emperor or the king is just a kind of figurehead, whereas the shogun in Japan held real power. So this was to restore the emperor's power. So it divided Japan pretty much in half, similar to the American Civil War. And it fully restored imperial rule. The Imperials won because they decided to trade with the Westerners and get modern weapons and stuff faster than the Shogun forces. And of course, this rapidly modernized Japan. And from this point on, they came to be a secondary power, as they had a growing grasp over Asia, pretty much. But they're still mistreated by Westerners. You see the question?
Is this the time they try to become really Western also?
Yeah.
Oh, also, I'm not sure if you know about this, but what kind of contributed to World War II also is I think it was the UN, or no, before the UN, like the thing that they had sort of drafted,
League of
like,
Nations.
drafted a declaration for like the equal treatment of Japanese people abroad or something,
Yeah.
and that they're like an equal race to the white race, and the U.S. actually like
They spit on it.
like voted it down and like scrapped it. So, yeah, they were kind of pissed about that.
Yeah, so, Japanese were, I didn't know about that,
Shocked.
thanks. Yeah, so yes, they're mistreated by Westerners. But they did earn a seat at the Treaty of Versailles, and they got some of Germany's Asian colonies because they had invaded them, because they saw the opportunity to. But still, mistreated by Westerners. Anyways, setting the world stage of the entire world, of course, in the 1920s and 1930s. First of all, the Roaring '20s, I'm sure everyone knows, just after World War I, there was a huge boom of jazz, art, and of course a booming economy, as well as prohibition, but I mean, that was also pretty big in the United States. And also the quick rise of fascism in Italy during the 1920s, with Mussolini coming to power and things like that. As well, just looking at the state of Germany in the 1920s. Here's a map of Germany. It's a bit smaller, but France got that little bit of France back.
France got a little bit of France back.
Yes.
How do you pronounce it? Alsace-Lorraine?
Alsace-Lorraine. That's how I pronounce it, at least. I don't know.
Yeah.
This part is also basically just owned by France because Germany couldn't pay back all their money. So like, okay, we're just gonna take part of your country and take all the money that it makes from there to us. So yeah, so they did that.
Not a good idea.
And then they also split East Prussia from the rest of Germany.
Yeah,
with,
down to.
yes, the Polish border, I'm sure you've heard. So yes, there's political chaos. There's a huge fear of communism, especially with the Russian Revolution and how bloody that was. And there are also a lot of communist and socialist parties in Germany that were fighting for power in the elections. But there are also paramilitary groups. All these different parties have their own military force. Like I'm sure you've heard the Nazi SA, the Storm Detachment. That was their own paramilitary group. Pretty much all parties had, not all parties, but most parties had their own paramilitary group. The communists and socialists, they would be fighting in the streets like gang fights.
Black shirts in Italy. Right? Yeah, black shirts.
Black shirts?
Yeah, Mussolini's also.
Well, yeah, he's already in power there.
Yeah. The Brits mostly.
And also a nearly dysfunctional military, of course. Even continuing with this, there was a huge hyperinflation.
Oh, this is just before shit hits the fan.
Yes. So in between the period of 1918 and late 1920s, Germany had to pay off war reparations for the war that they fought. And there was way too much money that they could buy. There's like trillions of dollars in modern money, of which Germany, just fighting a war that they lost, don't have. And so the government is like, let's just print out more money because then we hold more money. But of course that devalues the money, and so yes, it's mass printing of money. And here's a picture, just like all these marks. It's the currency was called marks, not as in Karl Marx, but just marks. And this might be the amount you need to buy a loaf of bread. It was somewhere in the trillions of marks to get a loaf of
Shopping
bread.
time.
Yes.
Wasn't Hungary's inflation during that time period worse? But I heard it's like 36 quadrillion.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It was terrible.
Yeah, 1936.
So, now, state of Japan, they had a lack of natural resources. So, and they had a crippled economy due to the Great Depression, which we'll get to in just a second. And so they had conquest through Asia. They took over Korea, a little bit of China, and of course some islands, just to look for resources. So, the Great Depression. Now, the Great Depression, it simplified, has been mostly contributed to the stock market crash of 1929. But that's not the sole reason. There are many causes that just unfortunately happened all at the same time. One of them was a decline of production in the industry. Just stuff wasn't being made as much. And at the same time, a huge overvaluation of the stocks. So these actual companies starting to lose money have their stock prices going way up. Way up. And so they're being overvalued. And usually when that happens, at some point there's a huge crash, of course. And with the overvalue of stocks, and in the agricultural area, all over America, there was a huge drought and dust bowls happening. So there wasn't as much crop that was being grown. And from that, with all this happening, a lot of anxious sellers sold all their stocks, and so this overvaluation of stocks completely crashed. And from then, the consumer confidence of everything went way down. People stopped buying things. And when people stop buying things, the factories don't make money. And when the factories don't make money, well, okay, the banks also closed. But when the factories don't make money, they have to fire all their workers. And so now there's no more workers, all these unemployed people. The stock market is down, of course. Okay. There's no crop being grown. So this is just terrible. And of course the effects was people starving. There are people starving on the streets. This is free soup, coffee, and donuts for the unemployed, which that is a lot of unemployed people. Some people have gone to the lengths of having to eat the vegetation grown on the streets of weeds and grass. Not like grass, actual grass.
Yes.
We
Yeah.
understand that.
Workers laid off, of course, that was mentioned before, and even the people who were allowed to, who kept their jobs had their wages lowered because the factories weren't making enough money. Continuing with that, with the gold standard of the world, it was felt around the world. When the American economy went way down, the rest of the world's economy went way down, including mostly affected by Europe. There was an attempt for government intervention, but it didn't really work. Not until FDR got in power. So yes, now we're going to a quick background of the rise of Hitler in Germany, of course. Yes, there he is. So, his personality, of course. I'm sure everyone knows his extreme personality that he has.
The memes.
Yes. Most of it is actually constructed by this person here, Joseph Goebbels, who was the propaganda mastermind behind all of Hitler's propaganda and his persona. When Hitler was trying to gain popularity, Joseph Goebbels constructed Hitler's persona that he would put out to the world. Persona. And he made many speeches to the German people, of course. He made many speeches. Many, many speeches. And with these speeches, they were, of course, made to really inspire people. They're made to enrage them. And they're made with lots of high energy. If you ever hear Hitler actually do a speech, like, I recommend, I mean, if you're comfortable with it.
You're gonna have to edit that, bud.
I mean, yeah, I understand.
I'm kidding.
the point, yeah.
I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
But I recommend listening to a Hitler speech on YouTube to just understand his sheer power. When in the 1920s and 30s.
Do you have one prepared on the slides right now?
No. But in the 1930s, when he'd actually make speeches in America, they'd have newsreels at theaters before movies, which is how you get news. And they'd occasionally play some of his speeches. And even just not understanding what he says, his pure energy, you feel what the message he's trying to get across.
You know,
Joseph
I kept
Goebbels.
getting a video on YouTube recommended that was just like Hitler talking in a normal voice, and I never watched it, but I was like, oh.
It's actually early, it's so different than his speeches.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So of course, with his speeches, he had to make some kind of promises. Promises. What kind of promises did he make? He promised to make Germany great again.
Gee, where did that? Where does that?
Yeah. Actually, he probably invented that. If you really break down the analogous modern politician, he stole a lot from this guy.
Shocker.
Take notes. And he also promised he would fix everything. The inflation, the loss of jobs from the Great Depression, all those good things. He's gonna, well, all those bad things he's gonna fix. He says he's gonna fix. And also, he promoted socialist ideas such as welfare, pension, and education, with some minor xenophobic ideas, but of course, you can't come out with that immediately.
I have a question.
Yes.
Were they actually like minor at the beginning?
Sorry, what?
Yeah.
Were they not like full? They were like minor.
Yeah, they're like, oh yeah, you know, there's some people that shouldn't be here, but it's okay.
Like you like wait a minute.
We can change that later. Right now, let's focus.
I mean, the main people he was against was communists, which most people were in Germany.
Yeah, like, he showed that banning all the other parties.
Yes.
And Jews.
Well, not at the
Not
start,
quite
I mean,
yet, but
he did, obviously was anti-Semitic, but he wasn't as vocal as he was later on. He was more towards communists, because it was really trying to ban all other opposition, because the communists were really the biggest threat to his power, and once he got rid of all the threats to his power, he really started going ham on his ideals of making Germany great.
since initially Hitler tried to go through violent revolts in beer halls and things like that, he got arrested, and obviously that didn't work. So then, he tried to go through the democratic systems of being elected into office for the presidency, and of course his popularity gained throughout the years. Yes.
Also, he had a lot of sympathizers in government, especially the sort of more conservative and the whole military. The whole military class was kind of.
Yes. Because eventually he was really close to winning an election one year, but at that year he was appointed a position in the government, and from there he use the power, and he got into power through that. So yeah, that's his road to power. Anyways, once he got into power, he started defying the Treaty of Versailles, of course. So he of course rearmed the military because the military was pretty bad at the time. Of course, he had a secret military and industrial buildup. He built factories and things to produce weapons to actually build an army. Now, when conscription was introduced, he started conscripting people. When conscription is just another way of saying drafting. Drafting is more of an American term. Conscription is a more like formal way to say it. And he also built up the Air Force and the Navy. But wait, isn't this kind of hard to do this in the Great Depression? It kind of is.
All their economy budget on the.
Yeah, their economy is down. Their currency is really bad. So how did they do this? He made something called the MEFO bill, which is just a government debt. It's just saying the government owns you this money and will be paid back at a certain point.
Did they ever pay it back to them?
No, they didn't. But the terms that they did,
They lost the war.
the terms that they did
Yeah,
put
but-
on it was that they would pay it back after their next war. And Hitler's plan was to take over the entire world, and that to be in one war. So when he finishes that war, he owns the entire world and is going to be the richest person in the world. So
I mean, did he
paying
really
off
want to
some
take
of
over the
these,
entire world?
huh?
Did he want to take over the entire world?
Probably, I don't know.
Who's loaning them all this money?
No, when they stole all the gold from the Jews and other people they thought were undesirable.
Well, no, they're just loaning. They're just like saying we'll pay this
Like
back
Wall
eventually.
Street?
They don't have the
Like,
money. They're
literally
saying we'll pay it
No,
back.
there's literally anyone.
All of his supporters, people who wanted to
Like,
make a
like if he was like, hey, I'm
Wait,
gonna.
wait, wait. So he made like an IOU and no
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
even like.
No one questioned
No,
it.
he's like, hey, factory, I'm gonna buy all your production of weapons. If I'll pay you in these bills of IOUs, and I'll pay it back after the next war. And people are like, okay, let's do it. And so he basically got things for free almost. And this funded the entire German military. Moving on to the German economy.
That's
During
like a
this
lot.
time, the GDP grew 55%.
What's that again?
Gross domestic product. It's the measurement of how much a country produces.
During steel factories.
And he made economic self-sufficiency because he knew if he's going to be at war with people, he can't trade for their resources. So economic self-sufficiency, which means he can just have the economy running on its own and make stuff. And he specialized in armament production, which is pretty good for him at his perspective. But after the war, when your entire economy is made of making weapons, you can't do much in a peaceful nation. Yeah.
Was it hard to make the economy self-sufficient?
Yeah, it was. Although there was a lot of German steel and a lot of German resources.
A lot.
That's
Yes.
insane. He was paying them with money that didn't.
Yeah.
I know, it's crazy.
It's like
If
it's
they
like
want the-
NFTs.
yeah.
It's like crypto.
The earliest version of cryptocurrency.
Litecoin.
So, with the Navy and the Air Force, the Navy rapidly grew, exponentially. They built far more ships. They totally disregarded the London Treaty and just built ships outside of that, secretly, of course. And also, pilots were secretly trained in the Soviet Union. Somehow, the Germans were able to get pilots in a Soviet airbase and train them secretly. And also, they secretly made planes. I don't know how they got in the Soviet Union to train them, but they did, and they got a lot of pilots from that.
And no one decided to think about what
Oh,
are they
yeah,
doing.
And no one wondered why there was
Okay.
a bunch of German people training to be pilots in Russia.
So moving into the Asian theater and the jungles, of course, switching hats. There's the Japanese War of Aggression, which is just a war against China. In Japan they call it, or not even Japan, but it was called the Second Sino-Japanese War, like the Mexican-American War, whereas the Mexicans call it the War of American Aggression. This is, Chinese say, it's the War of Japanese aggression.
Wait a minute, Mac,
It's
I'm
similar.
doing this right. Do you have like a stick?
A stick?
Like a pointer?
No.
Okay, can you just point your finger at the map like this is where we're gonna invade it? No, like look at the map also while you look.
Cut out
Okay,
the
this
top
is
though, cut out the
perfect.
top.
Okay, you're good.
Okay. So of course there's a
Wait,
Japanese.
I'm sorry. You took off your hat and there was another hat underneath your hat.
No, he's
No, I put on another hat.
Oh, okay. Wait,
Okay.
what?
Don't you see these here?
Why do you have so many hats?
These are multiple theaters. Anyways,
Oh my god.
there's a land invasion through Manchuria. This is Manchuria. And I'm getting short for
Yeah,
time.
because China was
Speed run.
unified at
Yes.
the time.
And also naval invasions at Shanghai and Hong Kong, as you see here.
You gotta speed run this.
Yes. So the Marco Polo Bridge incident, which is what set this all off, was a catalyst for the war. A Japanese train blew up in China.
They did it intentionally.
May or may not have been staged. But the Japanese were like, okay, you know what, China, if you blow up our trains, we're just going to kill all your people. So yes, Battle of Shanghai. It was a battle of the air forces mostly. Casualties were much higher than expected. And also a lot of plane models were tested by international nations. Other countries sent in their planes as volunteer forces to test out the models of biplanes and
That is
mono.
an awful idea.
Yes. Occasionally back to stalemate. Suddenly Japan starts losing, and there's a large-scale counterattack from the Chinese, but that doesn't work because the Chinese don't have good industry, and so there's a huge stalemate, and it's just stuck like that. So, the storm brews over Europe, of course. German expansion. With a huge German military buildup from 1934, they begin remilitarizing occupied zones. That zone in Western Germany, occupied by France, the Germans marched in and said, nope, this is ours again. Yes. I'm going to hold you guys for 2 more minutes.
Yeah.
And also
I
they
think our
built
next class starts in
fortifications.
It starts in
on
like
the
5
French border.
minutes.
Our next class, it's 127.
Just let him get through it.
Alright, well, we'll finish this section and continue next week. So Anschluss is the German word for joining, and it was the Germans sent Austrians a referendum saying, hey, you want to be German now?
Why is it just a bus in the middle of that crowd?
And the Austrians said, yes, we want to be part of Germany, so they got part of Germany.
Annex.
And also the justification behind this was that Austrians are Germans too, and so there you
I
go.
mean, Hitler was
Then they annexed Czechoslovakia, first with the Munich Agreement, and then the First Vienna Award and the occupation of Czechoslovakia, and finally a push towards Poland, eventually. And we'll get to that next week.
Thank you, Mr. Agnes.
We'll,
like he's terrifying.
we can review this, like going over a bit fast next week. Yeah.
Thanks,
Thank
Magna.
you all for coming.